My name is Naomi, and on Thanksgiving night, the people I called my family decided to turn me into their entertainment. The dining room smelled of roasted turkey and spiced wine. Candles flickered along the mahogany table. Silverware clinked, chairs creaked, and laughter spread like smoke. But it wasn't joy. It was sharp, directed, and cruel. It was aimed at me. Mark, my brother-in-law, leaned back in his chair, his voice loud enough to cut through the clatter of dishes. A painting? Really, Naomi? Smearing colors on a canvas and calling it work? That isn't a career. That's a hobby for children. My sister Julia didn't hesitate to join him. She sipped her wine, smirking over the rim of the glass. Naomi has always been like this. Head in the clouds, playing with brushes while the rest of us do the real work. She never grew up. Their laughter made my mother's eyes shine with agreement. She stabbed at her plate and said, her tone as cold as polished steel, "Art does not feed you, Naomi. At your age it's embarrassing. You should do something useful. Get a job. Earn something for once." I sat quietly, fork untouched. My plate was full, but my stomach was hollow. Their words landed harder than any blow. I could hear the scrape of knives against porcelain, the chew of food, the soft clink of jewelry as my sister gestured dramatically. All while they dissected my life as though I wasn't there. My cousin Lydia chimed in, her laugh sharp. "Remember when Naomi tried to sell her work at that street fair? A whole day in the sun for what, 2 pity sales? One of them from me." She snorted. If I hadn't bought that little canvas, she wouldn't have sold anything at all. Mark clapped his hands once as though sealing the mockery. "Exactly. This family works in real fields, finance, law, medicine. And then there's Naomi, the starving artist stereotype. The punchline at our own table." Heat crawled up my neck. My jaw locked. Under the table, my hand clenched until my nails dug into my palm. Still, I kept my face calm. Because they didn't know the truth. Julia leaned closer, her voice a conspiratorial whisper meant to humiliate. "Tell us, Naomi, how much did your last painting sell for? $200? Maybe $3? Laughter again, crueler this time. My mother shook her head in disgust. "It doesn't matter what it sold for. It's charity. Nobody buys that because it's good. They buy it because they pity her." I could feel every eye at the table sliding toward me, waiting for me to defend myself, waiting for me to break. But I said nothing. I lifted my glass of water, my hand steady despite the storm inside me, and took a slow sip. They thought my silence meant defeat. They thought they had proven me worthless. But what they didn't know was that the very walls around us, the tall ceilings, the crystal chandeliers, the polished marble floor, were mine. This mansion, the pride of our Thanksgiving gatherings, the symbol of our family's success, was in my name alone. They mocked me while dining in my home. They sneered at me under my chandeliers, laughed at me over food I had paid for, drank wine I had chosen. They thought I was powerless, when in truth they were sitting inside the proof of my strength. I let them laugh. I let them sharpen their knives. Because arrogance makes people blind. And when the blind fall, they fall harder. The conversation shifted briefly to business. Mark bragging about a deal, Julia boasting about her new car. But it circled back, inevitably, to me. Lydia smirked. "Naomi, when are you finally going to get married? Or at least move out of this big house? It's ridiculous for you to keep rattling around here alone. Sell it. Get something small. Humble. It's all you need for your kind of life." The others nodded in approval, agreeing that I should give up the very roof over my head. My mother sighed dramatically. "It's shameful, Naomi. Truly shameful." I sat perfectly still, every muscle tight but controlled. Because in my bag under the table was the deed. My name. My property. My proof. They wanted me small. They wanted me embarrassed. But soon their laughter would turn to silence. Soon they would choke on their own arrogance. As their laughter echoed off my marble walls, I reached into my bag, touched the folder, and felt the weight of the deed against my fingertips. Tomorrow, I would let them see whose house they had mocked me in. And they would never laugh the same way again. The Thanksgiving table only grew louder as the night dragged on. The food cooled, but the heat of their ridicule burned hotter with every word. Julia lifted her glass of wine, eyes glinting. "Honestly, Naomi, why don't you get a real job? The rest of us carry weight." You just float. Mark snorted. She wouldn't last a day at my firm. Deadlines, numbers, real pressure? She'd crumble. My cousin Lydia leaned across the table, her grin sharp. Or maybe she could work at the gallery near my office. They're always looking for someone to sweep floors. At least then she'd be close to her passion. The table erupted in laughter. Even my mother, who should have defended me, dabbed delicately at her lips with a napkin and said, "Lydia is right. Anything would be better than this embarrassment." I breathed slowly, forcing calm. Each insult layered itself onto the last, a mountain of contempt. And yet, none of them knew the truth. None of them had the faintest idea who really held the power at that table. But then the conversation shifted and cut deeper. Julia placed her glass down and smiled sweetly. "Actually, Mom, you'll be happy to know Mark and I have been talking. We think this house should be repurposed." My mother's eyes widened with interest. "Repurposed? How?" "A center for family gatherings," Julia said smoothly. "Events, reunions, holidays. We'd manage it, of course. Naomi doesn't need a house this size. It's wasted on her." Mark nodded eagerly. "We already have ideas. We'd renovate, put in a proper wine cellar, maybe even host clients here. Imagine the prestige, Hale family estate run properly." I froze. My fork hovered midair. They weren't just mocking me. They were planning to take the very home that belonged to me. Lydia added with a smirk, "Honestly, Naomi, it'd be the best thing for you. You'd finally be free of this burden. You could find a small apartment, something more fitting." The table buzzed with agreement. My mother's smile was thin and satisfied. "It's settled then. We'll discuss logistics after the holidays. Naomi, I assume you'll cooperate?" I looked from face to face, their eyes shining with arrogance, their smiles tight with expectation. They had already erased me in their minds. In that moment the decision crystallized. Silence had protected me long enough. But silence had also allowed them to grow bold enough to plan my eviction from my own house. I pressed my napkin gently onto my plate, folded it and set it aside. My voice was calm even. "I'll think about it." They mistook calm for weakness. Julia grinned. "Good. Finally, Naomi listens to reason." Mark raised his glass. "To progress. To moving this family forward." Glasses clinked. Laughter swelled again. But inside me something had shifted. I no longer just wanted to endure. I wanted to strike back. And I would do it in a way they could never recover from. When the plates were cleared, I excused myself, carrying my bag to the study down the hall. The noise of their celebration muffled behind the heavy door. Alone, I opened the folder and pulled out the deed. My name glared back at me from the paper, bold and undeniable. I ran my fingers across the ink. Ownership. Power. Proof. Tomorrow I would let them see it. Tomorrow their laughter would turn to silence. As I slid the deed back into the folder, I noticed something tucked behind it. An envelope I hadn't placed there. On the front, in neat handwriting, were 3 words they already know. The envelope with the words they already know sat heavy in my lap. My heart pounded as I slid it open. Inside was a single sheet. A photocopy of the mansion's deed. My name was circled in red ink, but below someone had scribbled, "They plan to challenge you. Protect yourself." I stared at the page until my vision blurred. Someone in this house knew the truth. Someone had leaked it. But who and why warn me? The laughter from the dining room grew louder, muffled through the walls. They clinked glasses, confident in their scheme. I folded the note back into the envelope, tucked it inside the folder, and locked the study door behind me. The next morning the house was quiet. Leftover dishes piled in the sink, wine glasses abandoned on side tables. My family had scattered, full of food and arrogance, leaving me with the mess. I washed each plate carefully, but my mind was elsewhere. I needed proof. Not just the deed. I needed an arsenal of evidence no one could twist. I started with the deed itself. I drove to the county clerk's office, the official building where records sat in steel cabinets and digital archives. The clerk, a tired-looking woman with glasses perched on her nose, asked, "Name?" "Naomi Rivers," I said. She typed search, then printed. "Here." I held the paper in my hands. The original registration, stamped and signed, years old. My name clear and bold. No room for doubt. Next, I requested tax records. Page after page showed payments made directly from my account. Proof I had funded every inch of marble, every chandelier, every renovation my family bragged about. By the time I left, my folder was twice as thick. That afternoon I met with Lena, an old friend who worked as a paralegal. We sat in a quiet cafe, steam rising from mugs between us. I slid the folder across the table. She scanned quickly, her brow furrowing. "This is airtight, Naomi. You own everything. They can mock you, but they cannot touch this legally." "Then why the note? Why warn me they'll challenge it?" She thought for a moment. "Because arrogance makes people reckless. Maybe they think they can bully you into handing it over. Or maybe..." Her voice dropped. "Someone inside wants you ready." I leaned in. "An ally?" She nodded. "Possibly. Either way, you need more than papers. You need witnesses. Testimony. Proof you've lived here, maintained it, carried it. So when you reveal the truth, it's unshakable." Her words anchored me. I began collecting everything. Photos of me overseeing repairs, receipts in my name, utility bills addressed to me alone. Even delivery slips signed with my hand. Piece by piece, I built a wall no one could climb. That night, I walked through the mansion slowly, taking photos of each room. The library I'd filled with books, the gallery where my paintings hung, the conservatory I'd restored from ruins. Proof that this house wasn't just mine on paper. It was mine in every brushstroke and every breath. But as I moved through the rooms, I felt eyes on me. Shadows flickered at the edges of the hall. When I reached the front window, I saw headlights across the street. A car idled in the dark, engine running. I snapped a photo of the license plate, then drew the curtains shut. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. Someone was watching. Maybe family. Maybe not. Either way, it meant they were nervous. And nervous people make mistakes. Later, as I filed the new evidence into my folder, I found another slip of paper slid beneath the front door. No envelope this time. Just 6 words scrawled in ink. "Do not wait too long, Naomi." I stood in the silent foyer, note trembling in my hand, when my phone buzzed with a text from Julia. "Dinner tomorrow. We need to discuss the house." The text from Julia, "Dinner tomorrow. We need to discuss the house," kept replaying in my head. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. My family wanted to corner me. I refused to walk in unprepared. The next morning I called Lena again. She met me at the same cafe, sliding into the seat across from me with her usual briskness. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said. "I didn't," I admitted, pushing the phone across to her. "Julia wants to meet. She says we need to discuss the house." Lena's jaw tightened. "They're moving fast. Probably already talking to lawyers. Naomi, you can't face this alone. You need real backup." I nodded. "Who do you recommend?" She thought for a moment, then pulled out her phone. "There's someone I used to work with. Sharp. Ruthless when needed. And she doesn't flinch at family drama. I'll set it up." That evening I sat in a small law office tucked between 2 glass towers downtown. The nameplate read Amelia Crane. Iaskew Amelia was in her 40s, hair tied neatly, eyes cold but not unkind. She shook my hand firmly. "Lena tells me you need protection." I laid the folder on her desk. "I need more than that. I need to be ready for whatever they throw at me." She flipped through the documents. Deed, tax records, utility bills, her expression unreadable. Finally she closed the folder and leaned back. "This is solid. Very solid. But your family won't back down easily. They'll argue you're unfit, unstable, that you can't maintain the property. They'll try to drag your reputation through the mud." I clenched my fists. "They already have." "Then we use it against them," Amelia said calmly. "First, we secure multiple copies of all documents, digital, notarized, filed with the court. Second, we prepare witnesses. Neighbors, contractors, anyone who can attest you've lived here and cared for the estate. Third, we gather financials showing you've paid every bill. That leaves no cracks." Lena nodded approvingly. "Exactly what I told you." I exhaled, some of the tension leaving my chest. Amelia wasn't just competent. She was strategic. And what about the threats? The notes? Someone slipped warnings into my folder. Amelia tapped her pen against the desk. "That means you have an ally on the inside. Don't ignore it. But don't trust blindly either." Document everything. If it comes to court, even anonymous notes can raise questions. When I left her office, the city lights blurred into a mosaic of fire and glass. For the first time, I felt less alone. That night, I spread every document across my dining table. Bills, statements, letters. I made copies until my printer whined in protest. I labeled folders official, backup, court. At midnight, Lena came by with pizza. She looked at the piles and smirked. "You're building an army of paper." "That's the plan," I said. But even as we laughed quietly, the weight of tomorrow's dinner pressed down. Facing them at that table again felt like walking into a trap. The next day, Amelia joined me at the restaurant where Julia had arranged the meeting. Julia and Mark were already there, smiles stretched too tight. My mother sat between them, silent but stern. "Naomi," Julia said, her tone falsely warm, "we're glad you came. We need to be practical. This house, our family's house, is wasted on you alone. You should sign it over, for everyone's benefit." Mark slid a document across the table. "A transfer agreement. Simple. Clean. We'll even give you a stipend to move out. Fair, isn't it?" I didn't touch the paper. Amelia did. She scanned it once, then let out a short laugh. "This has no legal standing. In fact, presenting it borders on coercion." Mark's face reddened. Julia snapped, "Stay out of this. This is a family matter." Amelia's eyes were ice. "And I'm family counsel now. Try again." My mother leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Naomi, stop hiding behind strangers. You've embarrassed us long enough. Do the right thing." I held her gaze steady this time. "The right thing for whom? You? Julia? Or the people who've lived in my house rent-free for years while mocking me under my own roof?" Their faces faltered. For once, silence fell across the table. Julia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, smirked, and turned it toward me. It was a photo of my mansion taken just minutes ago, from inside the gates. The caption read, "Enjoy it while you can." The photo on Julia's phone made my stomach twist. Someone had been inside my gates, close enough to snap the picture. They wanted me rattled. They wanted me to feel cornered. I looked straight at her. "Who took that photo?" Julia smiled thinly. "Does it matter? The point is, Naomi, this is slipping out of your hands. Stop clinging to something you can't keep." Amelia slid Julia's phone back across the table. "You've just admitted to trespassing and harassment. Thank you. That will look excellent in court." Julia's face darkened, but she said nothing more. My mother ended the meeting with a sharp, "Think carefully, Naomi. This is your last chance." Back in the car, Amelia muttered, "They're escalating, which means they're nervous. We can use that." Lena leaned forward from the back seat. "So what's next?" "Naomi, you've got the truth, but we need to decide how to use it." Amelia's eyes flicked to me. "We have two options. Quiet, let the court handle it. Or loud, expose them publicly so they can't spin it in their favor." I knew immediately. Loud. They've humiliated me in front of family, friends, neighbors. They want me small. If I strike back, it has to be where they can't hide. Amelia studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we stage it. A controlled reveal. Somewhere with witnesses. Somewhere they expect to shine, and instead they fall." Mason, the investigator Amelia recommended, joined us the next day. A quiet man in a gray jacket, he carried a small tablet loaded with files. "I've tracked their movements," he said, placing the tablet on my table. "Julia's been contacting contractors about renovations. Mark's been talking to financial advisors about liquidating assets. They're already planning to spend money they don't have." I stared at the screen. "They think they've already won." "Exactly," Mason said. "Which makes them sloppy. They leave traces. Receipts. Emails. All of it can be documented." Amelia's tone was sharp. "Perfect. That will be the spine of our case. But for the reveal, we need more than documents. We need spectacle." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Spectacle?" "Yes," Amelia said. "Something undeniable. Something that humiliates them the same way they've humiliated Naomi. A gala. A fundraiser. A family celebration where they'll be surrounded by peers." I leaned back, the image forming in my mind. Julia and Mark smug in front of guests bragging about their plans. my mother smiling with approval. And then the truth projected for all to see. When? I asked. Mason scrolled his tablet. There's a charity event at the mansion next week. Hosted by Julia but under your roof. She invited donors, family, friends, even local press. It's perfect. My lips curved into a cold smile. Then that's where we do it. For the next several days we built the plan piece by piece. Mason wired the house discreetly. Tiny cameras in corners, microphones and chandeliers. Amelia drafted sealed packets of evidence for the press and the board of trustees Julia wanted to impress. Lena rehearsed with me, walking me through every step of what I would say. Keep it simple, she reminded me. Don't shout. Don't argue. Just present the facts. Let the weight of truth do the crushing. I practiced in front of the mirror, folder in hand. For years you told me I was nothing. Tonight you'll see who really owns this house. Each night Mason brought more files. Transfers Julia made using forged signatures. Emails where Mark bragged about taking over the property. Notes from my mother encouraging them to make Naomi see sense. Every file was another brick in the wall I was building around myself. Every document was another nail in their coffin. The night before the event, we gathered in my study. The folder lay open on the table, pages spread like cards in a winning hand. Amelia looked around at us, Lena, Mason, and me. Tomorrow, she said quietly, you end this. They'll be in your house, surrounded by their friends, ready to humiliate you again. Instead, you'll pull the floor out from under them. But be ready. People like Julia and Mark don't go down quietly. I nodded, my pulse steady. I'm ready. At midnight, as the others left, I checked the front door. Another note had been slipped under it. Just 4 words this time. They will fight dirty. The night of the charity event arrived draped in gold and glass. Chandeliers burned bright. Music drifted through the air. And my house filled with people who thought it was Julia's. Guests marveled at the marble floors, the velvet curtains, the oil paintings on the walls, paintings I had hung, but which Julia claimed were family heirlooms. I stood at the edge of the room, dressed in black, quiet but steady. Lena hovered near the buffet, watching. Amelia sat near the front, a sealed folder in her lap. Mason moved like a shadow near the projector, checking wires, pretending to be staff. Everything was in place. Julia floated from group to group, laughing too loudly, her wine glass never empty. Mark strutted beside her, talking about our estate, as if he'd built it with his own hands. My mother sat like a queen near the fireplace, receiving compliments for raising such a successful family. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I held it down. Tonight wasn't about anger. It was about precision. At 8 sharp, Julia tapped her glass. The room quieted. Welcome everyone, she said, her smile shining. We are honored to host you in our family home. This mansion has always been the heart of our gatherings, and soon it will become something more. A place for events, a center for legacy. Applause rippled. My stomach tightened. She continued. Thanks to Mark's vision and my mother's guidance, we're preparing to renovate and expand. Tonight is the first step in building a future worthy of the Hale name. My hands clenched around my clutch. My name erased from my own house. Mason's voice crackled in the earpiece Amelia had given me. Ready on your signal. I took a step forward, when suddenly the projector screen behind Julia flickered to life on its own. Not with our prepared evidence but with a shaky video. The footage showed me, alone in my dining room, late at night, papers spread across the table. My voice faint but clear. For years they mocked me. Tomorrow I'll destroy them. Gasps erupted in the room. Guests turned toward me, whispers rising. Julia froze, then recovered with a triumphant smile. See? She admits it herself. Naomi is jealous. Vindictive. She wants to ruin us because she has nothing. The screen went black. My pulse hammered. That footage, someone had been inside my home, filming me without my knowledge. They had hacked the projector, hijacked Mason's system. Lena rushed to my side, whispering fiercely. Naomi, don't let them spin this. You have the truth. Use it now. Amelia's eyes locked on mine across the room. She gave the smallest nod. I stepped forward, steadying my breath. Yes, I said, my voice cutting through the whispers. I said those words because they are true. For years you mocked me. For years you tried to erase me. Tonight I will show you who really owns this house. Gasps again, louder this time. Julia's smirk faltered. Mark's face went pale. My mother gripped her chair. But before Mason could start the prepared presentation, the lights flickered, then cut out entirely. Darkness swallowed the room. Guests shouted, startled. Glass shattered as someone dropped a drink. I heard Julia's voice rise above the noise. Do you see? She sabotaged this. She wants to humiliate us. Panic spread, the perfect cover for lies. My window was closing. In the dark, Mason's voice hissed in my ear. Backup systems down. Someone pulled the power. Give me 2 minutes, maybe 3. I gripped the folder tighter. 2 minutes felt like 2 lifetimes. Just as I steadied myself to speak, a beam of light cut across the room. A guest had turned on their phone flashlight, and in its glow I saw Julia, standing by the breaker box with her hand still on the lever. The room stayed in darkness for several seconds, broken only by the glow of cell phone screens. Guests muttered nervously, some already edging toward the exits. My own heartbeat felt louder than the crowd. Then I saw her. Julia, frozen in the narrow beam of a phone flashlight, her hand still clutching the breaker lever. Her eyes widened, caught. Gasp spread. A man near the door whispered. Did she cut the power? Another voice answered. Why would she? Julia quickly recovered, lifting her chin. It tripped on its own. I was trying to fix it. But the doubt was already planted. The room murmured louder, suspicion rolling through the crowd. Mason hissed in my earpiece. Backup coming online. 5 seconds. And then the chandeliers blazed to life again. Light flooded the hall. The projector hummed back on, this time under Mason's control. The screen filled with the first document, property deed, my name bold across the top. Gasps cut through the air. Julia spun toward the screen, her face draining of color. Mark stepped forward, stammering. That's fake. It has to be fake. I walked slowly to the center of the room, folder in my hands. Every eye turned toward me. My voice was clear, steady. You've all been told this house belongs to Julia. That she runs it, that she owns it. Tonight you see the truth. This mansion has been mine for years. Paid for with my earnings. Maintained with my money. Every inch of this place belongs to me. The screen shifted to tax records, row after row of payments drawn from my accounts. Utility bills in my name. Renovation invoices signed by me. Guests whispered. One woman near the buffet shook her head. She paid for everything. Mark barked, desperate. No, this is twisted. Naomi is unstable. She's trying to steal what's ours. Amelia rose from her seat, calm and deliberate. What's yours? These are certified documents, stamped by the county clerk. Witnesses, contractors, banks, all will testify. Would you like to keep lying in front of donors and press? The board members Julia had invited shifted uncomfortably. Phones lifted, recording every word. I turned slowly, facing Julia and my mother. For years you mocked me. You told me art was worthless. You told me I was worthless. But every time you gathered here to sneer at me, you sat under my roof. You laughed at me on my marble, drank wine I paid for, posed for photos in front of my doors. The projector changed again, photos Mason had collected. Julia showing guests around the house, claiming it as her own. Mark bragging at a dinner party about our renovations. All of it time-stamped, all of it undeniable. Gasps turned to murmurs of disapproval. One donor muttered, "We've been deceived." Another snapped, "This is disgraceful." Julia tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. "Naomi, you're twisting this. We only wanted what's best for the family." I cut her off. "You wanted to erase me. You wanted to push me out of my own house. But you forgot one thing, truth leaves a trail. And I collected every step you took." I pulled the last page from my folder and held it high. The final proof. My father left me the inheritance that built this estate. It was never yours to claim. Never will be. The screen displayed the letter in my father's handwriting. Notarized, undeniable. The silence was heavy, crushing. Julia's face collapsed. Mark's hand shook. My mother's lips pressed into a thin, bitter line, but she didn't speak. Then the room erupted. Guests whispered furiously. Some confronted Julia directly. "You lied to us. You let us believe this was yours. You humiliated your own sister in her own house. Julia's composure cracked. She lunged toward me, hissing, "You'll regret this." Security, already alerted by Amelia, stepped forward and blocked her. Mark tried to pull her back, but she shoved him away, her mask finally shattered. I stood tall, folder still in my hand, my voice cutting through the chaos. "For years you called me nothing. Tonight, everyone sees the truth. The nothing was never me. It was you." Phones caught every word. Flashes blinded me, but I didn't flinch. Just as the room roared with scandal, my phone buzzed in my clutch. A new message appeared on the screen. "Nice show, but you've only made the first cut. The real fight starts tomorrow." The ballroom was no longer a celebration. It was a storm. Guests pulled out their phones, recording every moment. Some confronted Julia directly, voices sharp with anger. "You lied to us. You said this house was yours. You begged for donations while pretending." Their words cut like blades. Julia's smile crumbled. Mark tried to shield her, but his own hands trembled. "This is a misunderstanding," he shouted, voice too high, too desperate. Naomi twisted the truth. Twisted. Amelia stepped forward, voice crisp. "Certified records do not twist. Neither do notarized deeds. The only thing twisted here is your greed." Applause broke out from the back of the room. Not applause for Julia or Mark, but for me. Guests who had doubted me moments before now nodded, their whispers filled with disgust for my family. My mother rose slowly from her chair, her face tight as stone. "Enough. This display has gone far enough." I turned toward her. "You sat silent for years while they mocked me. Tonight you sit silent while they try to erase me. Enough is right, but not for me. For you." The room went quiet. For the first time, my mother had no ready retort. Julia snapped, lunging toward the microphone. "She's lying. She forged." The screen behind her lit again. This time with emails Mason had uncovered. Julia's own words, bragging about how she would finally shove Naomi out and take over the estate once and for all. Gasps turned to shouts. A donor pointed at Julia. "You manipulated us." Another shook his head. "You'll never see another dollar from me." Julia's legs buckled. Mark tried to steady her, but she shoved him away, her mask gone. Security moved in, guiding Julia and Mark toward the exit as the crowd surged with anger. Cameras flashed, voices rose, and by the time the front doors closed behind them, their reputations were ashes. My mother stayed behind. She stood rigid near the fireplace, eyes burning into me. "You think you've won, Naomi. But you've humiliated this family. You'll regret tonight." I met her gaze, my voice low but firm. "No. I ended the humiliation. And the world saw who caused it." The crowd began to disperse, some guests shaking my hand, others whispering support. But beneath the noise, I felt the weight of the message on my phone. The real fight starts tomorrow. By the time the last car left the driveway, the mansion was eerily silent. Mason checked the projector and nodded. "Everything's secured. Copies are already backed up online. They can't erase what happened tonight." Lena hugged me tightly. "You did it. You finally did it." But I couldn't relax. My mother's glare still burned in my mind. Julia's shriek still rang in my ears. And that message, a warning or a threat? I walked through the empty ballroom, heels echoing on the marble. The chandeliers still blazed, but the house felt colder. Shadows stretched long across the walls. When I reached the front door, another envelope waited on the mat. My name scrawled across it. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside was a photo of me standing in the ballroom just moments earlier, folder in hand. On the back, in red ink, were the words, "We're not done." I turned sharply, scanning the driveway, the hedges, the street beyond the gates. A single car idled in the dark, headlights off. Watching. Morning light filtered through the curtains, but I hadn't slept. My phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand. Notifications, messages, calls. I finally picked it up. Headlines blazed across the screen. Charity gala turns into scandal. Artist Naomi Rivers reveals shocking truth about family estate. Sister and brother-in-law humiliated in public exposure. Clips from last night were everywhere. Me holding the folder. Julia caught at the breaker box. Mark shouting desperately while guests jeered. The internet had already decided. Julia and Mark weren't visionaries. They were liars. Parasites. Lena brought coffee into the kitchen, her eyes wide as she scrolled her own phone. Naomi, you're trending. People are posting your speech everywhere. They're calling you fearless. I sipped carefully, my hands still trembling. And Julia? Ruined, Lena said flatly. Sponsors are pulling out of her projects. Mark's firm released a statement distancing themselves. Even your mother hasn't spoken publicly yet. But she will. As if summoned, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, the transcript appeared on the screen. This isn't over, Naomi. You humiliated us. You'll regret it. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to stay calm. Fear was their weapon. I wouldn't hand it to them. By noon, Amelia arrived, crisp and composed as always. She set her briefcase on the table and spread documents. Julia and Mark filed an emergency petition this morning. They're claiming you're unstable, unfit to manage the property. They're trying to drag this into court fast. Lena exploded. Unstable? After last night? Everyone saw the truth. Amelia raised a hand. Public opinion helps, but court is different. They'll throw everything at you. Old arguments, personal attacks, even twisted stories from your mother. We have to be ready. I felt heat rise in my chest. Let them. I've lived under their lies long enough. I won't back down now. Mason stepped in through the back door, tablet in hand. Good. Because I dug deeper. Julia and Mark weren't just planning to steal the house. They've been siphoning money from family accounts for years. Donations, business funds, all funneled into personal luxuries. He tapped the screen showing wire transfers, jewelry receipts, vacation bookings. If they want a war in court, we'll bury them with their own dirt. Still, my mother lingered in the background of every thought. She hadn't spoken last night beyond her bitter warning, but her silence was dangerous. She was the matriarch. She held influence. And I knew she wouldn't accept defeat quietly. That evening, a reporter came to the gate. Cameras flashed, microphones stretched forward. Naomi, do you regret exposing your family? I stood tall, folder in hand. Regret belongs to those who deceive. I simply showed the truth. The clip aired on the evening news. Messages of support poured in from strangers, from art students, from women who wrote, "You gave me courage." But beneath the praise came new threats. Anonymous numbers, blocked callers. "We'll take you down. Blood is thicker than deeds. The house won't save you." That night, as I tucked the folder back into my safe, the mansion felt both stronger and more fragile than ever. My walls were mine, my name was mine, but the battle had only shifted arenas. Just before midnight, an email arrived. No subject line. No sender listed. Only one attachment. A court summons stamped and signed, ordering me to appear within 72 hours. The courthouse smelled of dust and polished wood. 3 days after the gala, I stood before the judge with Amelia at my side. Lena and Mason behind me like a shield. Julia and Mark sat at the opposite table, their faces pale but defiant. My mother sat between them, lips pressed into a thin smile, her silence sharper than any insult. The judge reviewed the documents with deliberate care. One by one, Amelia presented the deed, the tax records, the bills, the letters from contractors, the inheritance. Each stamped, notarized, undeniable. When Julia's lawyer tried to argue that I was unstable, Amelia cut him down with precision. Unstable? She has managed this estate flawlessly for years. Payments made on time. Repairs overseen. Exhibits hosted. The only instability is in my client's relatives, who lied to donors and plotted theft. Mason stepped forward with his findings. Transfers. Emails. Receipts. Proof that Julia and Mark had siphoned money from accounts that were not theirs. The judge's expression hardened. Finally, the gavel struck. The property is, and has always been, the legal possession of Naomi Rivers. All claims against her are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, financial misconduct by Julia and Mark Hale will be referred for investigation. The courtroom buzzed. Julia gasped. Mark cursed under his breath, and my mother finally broke her silence with a sharp hiss. "You've destroyed this family, Naomi." I turned toward her, voice calm. "No. I exposed what was already rotten. Families don't break when truth is spoken. They break when lies are allowed to rule. Security escorted Julia and Mark out. Cameras flashed in the hallway. Reporters surged forward shouting questions. One asked, "Naomi, what comes next?" I held the folder close, but my voice was free of weight for the first time in years. Next? I live in peace. In my home. On my terms. The story dominated headlines for weeks. Julia and Mark face public disgrace, their names synonymous with fraud. My mother withdrew from society, her silence finally consuming her. The mansion, my mansion, became more than just walls. It became proof that patience is power, that silence can end, and that truth once spoken can't be erased. One evening as I walked through the gallery where my paintings hung, Mira, my niece who had watched silently through it all, stood beside me. "Aunt Naomi," she whispered, "I'm proud of you. You showed them all." I smiled, brushing a hand over her hair. "Remember this, Mira. When people tell you you're nothing, it's usually because they're afraid of what you really are." Now I say the same to you, the one listening to my story. If you've ever been mocked, belittled, told you're worthless, don't believe it. Collect your truth. Protect your proof. And when the time comes, reveal it where no one can deny you. Revenge isn't about rage. It isn't about cruelty. It's about justice. About reclaiming what was always yours. And when I stood in my own house watching their lies collapse, I realized something simple. I was never useless. I was never weak. I was the owner all along.